There's some right outside that door. Y'all can grab one so you can write on it. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians 9. So you can join me there. We need to reflect back on 1 Corinthians 8 because Paul did not write, okay, I'm starting chapter 9 now. Always remember that because that was just put in there for our convenience, not for Paul. Because he's making an argument, all right? And I don't know if y'all remember 2 weeks ago when we looked at this argument, what he was making. I think it's a pretty profound argument from 8. The issue in chapter 8 was what? Do we remember? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. I know, it's like an eternity, all right? To eat or not to eat, can you be any more vague? Or can you be a little more precise? Food offered to idols, all right? So eating is not just eating. Should Christians eat? Yes, we should, okay? All right? Some of us make a living off of the people eating in our lives, all right? But no, the issue was food sacrificed to idols, okay? You need to remember in Acts 15, all right, this is around 50 AD, so about 15 to 17 years after Christ is crucified. The issue comes up, should all these new believers, these new Greek believers, should they have to follow the Old Testament law? Should they be required to do that or expected to do that, all right? And Paul was going to all these Greek cultures and evangelizing them, sharing the gospel with them, and people were coming behind Paul and saying, oh, guys, come here, because we need to have a little surgery, and this is what it takes to be really a Christian. And the guys were like, I don't know if I'm going to have that surgery at 30, all right? 8 days old, sure. I wouldn't know it any better, all right? 30, 40 years old, that may not be a surgery I want to have, all right? You also can't eat this, and especially bacon, all right? So you get all of these sort of this idea, and it's like, wait a second. So at the Jerusalem Council, they kind of huddle up, right? And they say, no, let's don't put this burden on them because we haven't even done so well with it, all right? So let's not put it on them. But there are 4 things we want to make sure stay on the table. And this is our advice, led especially by James, the brother of Jesus, who was sort of the leader of the church in Jerusalem. And the first one was sexual immorality. Because sexual immorality is not a temporal thing. It's not a dispensational thing. It's not, well, you're in the wilderness, probably not a good idea to eat this as you're walking around in the wilderness, all right? The Canaanites are over here, and they do this. Well, the Canaanites been gone for 1,000 years. So it's not anymore the sacrificial system. What do we do with the sacrificial system after Jesus? What does Jesus say? What's the last 3 words Jesus says? It is finished, all right? And you probably need to ask the question, what's it, okay? The sacrificial system is gone. So what's happened to the Old Testament law in 50 AD? So much of it is, I don't want to say antiquated, but it's really somewhat obsolete at this point, all right? But they say, look, sexual immorality is still on the table because you know what? Sexual morality is still the same as it's always been, all right? But they add these things. Don't eat food sacrificed to idols. Don't eat food with the blood still in it, all right? These were all pagan practices, which were very similar to the Canaanite practices that Moses wrote and said, don't live like them, all right? These are all sexual things that are off the table. Tattoos, piercings. The Canaanites did these things, all right? So when someone quotes to you the verse that says you shouldn't get tattoos and piercings now in this day, it's like, Canaanites been dead for a long time, all right? That was the point, to distinguish themselves, okay? And we take this a little too far, okay? But one of these things was do not eat food sacrificed to idols. Now, would that be prevalent in that culture, especially in the Greek cultures? Absolutely, especially in Corinth, all right? The whole town revolved around the square, which had all these temples. If you wanted to get meat, pretty much the only option you had was to get it from the temple who would sell the meat that was used for sacrifices, okay? Is that a problem today? How many of you go to the store and go, I don't know, has this been sacrificed to idols? I need to find out. I need to know. Guys got to know. No, it's not. It's just not an issue anymore, okay? But in Paul's day, it was, all right? So Paul makes the argument. He says, you need to be aware there are people who are weak in their faith, all right? And there are people who are strong. Now, how would you distinguish Paul's definition of a weak Christian according to 1 Corinthians 8? How would you define that? He says there are those who are weak, and you don't want to eat food sacrificed to idols around them because you may cause them to stumble, right? Because their faith is weak. Okay, a newer believer. Okay, what else? Okay, Paul would have that mentality. Why would Paul have that mentality and not a new Christian? Okay. So it was a customary thing, a lifestyle thing. For them, when they ate food sacrificed to idols, that was an act of worship. Going to a temple prostitute was an act of worship. Now they're a Christian, and they realize that's not who I worship anymore. Have a hamburger. Whoa, I can't eat that because that's an act of worship. Paul says what? What does Paul do when you hand him the same hamburger? Yum. Meat, good, all right? What they worship is not a God anyway. So the weakness of their faith was an immaturity of their faith, all right? Now, is it okay to be an immature Christian at some point in your life? Yes, all of us were, all right? Is it okay to stay an immature Christian? No, and that was Paul's argument, right? I would love to teach you more, but I can't because you guys are still drinking milk when I want to give you meat, okay? So this is where he's saying it. So the last verse, I want you to go to the last verse in 8. It says, therefore, if food causes my brother to fall, and it's the Greek word scandalizo, or scandalize, if they're scandalized by this, all right? If food causes my brother to fall, I will never eat meat. I will never again eat meat. Why? What? Yeah, keep reading. So that I won't cause my brother to fall. All right? Now, is that a pretty bold statement? Is Paul limiting his freedom? For Paul, sitting at the house by himself, I can do this, but what if somebody sees me? What if I'm interacting with somebody? And I've told you this story a couple of weeks ago. I was eating dinner one night, and I saw a very, very prominent Christian evangelical leader sitting with a very, very prominent Christian music artist at a restaurant, and they probably had 5 or 6 drinks on the table between the two of them. All right? Now, I don't have a dog in this hunt, but I know a lot of people do. And what if someone had seen them? What if somebody at the last crusade, revival, whatever things they were doing, conference that they did, are sitting there and seeing this evangelist sitting here with a worship leader, and they're going, what in the world? What would happen to their faith? This is what Paul says. I'm never going to eat meat again. All right? Is that an act of duty or is that an act of love? Love. Okay? Okay. And this is kind of the argument he's going to play off. Okay? So let's roll into 9. So he's going to make the rhetorical question, am I not free? And by that he means what? That's why I say you can't just go, well, chapter 9, I'll blank out my brain and just start on chapter 9. No, we have to look at chapter 8. Am I not free? Free to do what? To eat, all right? You could apply this directly to eat. It could apply to everything, okay? It's the word eleutherios, which means freedom. Do I not have this freedom, okay? Am I not free? Am I not an apostle? All right, now that's a different question. An apostle is what? One who has been sent out. Apo is away. Stello means to be sent, all right? I've said this many times. The Greek is apostle. The Latin is missionary? Okay, so everybody see this? That's pretty easy. Okay, am I not an apostle? An apostle will have rights. Have I not seen Jesus our Lord? All right, now if you want to be an apostle, that's the box you got to check. All right, remember when Judas hangs himself, Peter and the boys get together and they say what about that 12th spot? We're supposed to replace this person, all right? Because otherwise there'd be a blank place on one of the gates in Jerusalem, right? In the new heaven and the new earth, okay? Because there's got to be 12, okay? Or the 12 foundations. That's it. All right? So they replace him. Who do they replace him with? Holy cow, come on, guys. Yes, keep going. Good, Matthias. All right, and what were his qualifications? If you look in Acts 1, you can see the qualifications. He's been with us since Jesus' baptism. All right, now, when we talk about the disciples, Jesus was with the disciples, does that only mean the 12? No, you see Matthias, he's been with them the whole time, all the way through. The 12 apostles are different, okay? So Paul is saying, have I not seen the Lord? Now, did Paul ever see Jesus? Yeah, he saw something. I don't know what he thinks he saw, but he did have a conversation with Jesus, all right? We also understand that he spent 3 years in Arabia, all right? He tells us this in the Galatian letter. I spent 3 years in Arabia, in the desert, and essentially that was his seminary, all right? And so Jesus spent 3 years with his apostles and then 3 years with Paul later on, okay? So he's just making the argument. He's making the argument, I am an apostle, and I have these rights that I could exercise, all right? Now, I will restrict my rights because I understand there is a weakness of others, all right? And I want to be very vigilant. But he's saying, I'm not giving up these rights. I'm yielding these rights because I love you guys, all right? Are you not my work in the Lord? All right, that would be, again, another proof of apostleship. If I'm not an apostle to others, at least I am to you, for you are the seal of my apostleship in the Lord, all right? This word seal, this word spragus, all right? In Revelation 6, we have the scroll, and it has what on it? Yeah, seals. What are the seals for? Paul says, you are the seal of my apostleship. In Revelation 6, we've got the scroll. It's got 7 seals on it. What's the value, what's the purpose of the seals? To keep it shut. Okay, you could do the lick thing, and that would keep it shut, right? Why do you put a seal with a signet ring on it? Hang on, Pamela, go ahead. To show who it comes from. Okay, what else? Exactly, the authority. Because remember, what's all of heaven say? There was a scroll, and no one had the authority to open it, all right? So it's a validation thing. It's a very important document. And Paul says, you are the seal of my apostleship. No one can doubt it, all right? This is an authentication of it, all right? And you are this, and therefore I am an apostle. Verse 3. And what you need to ask, the question you need to ask in your head is, why is Paul so adamant in his defense here? What's happened? What's transpired that causes him to defend himself so strongly? And we see this. Somebody questioned him. Somebody questioned his defense, or he's trying to justify this. I'm not going to eat, and I am an apostle. I could eat, but I'm not going to, and here's my defense. 3, my defense, or my apologetic, all right? To those who examine me, anakrino, it just means to be a judge, all right? 4, don't we have the right to eat and drink? Again, back to chapter 8, same idea. Don't we have the right or the authority? Does anybody have the word authority in their text? It's the same word. It's exousia. It's to have an authority. Don't we have the right to be accompanied by a Christian wife like the other apostles and the Lord's brothers and Cephas? We all know Peter was married, right? All right, how do we know Peter was married? Because he has a mother-in-law. We get that one shot. That's all we get. Do we know if any other were married? No, we don't. And right here, it's all we see. Or do Barnabas and I alone have no right or authority to refrain from working? All right? from being bivocational. Now, why does he bring up Barnabas? If we're on the third missionary journey when he's writing this. Barnabas was with him on which missionary journeys? You can say the first one, right? Everybody good with the first one? Was he with him on the second one? No, what was the issue? Why did Barnabas go, fine, you go your way, I'll go my way? Mark, all right? Barnabas wanted to take his cousin Mark again. And what happened the first time around? Mark got halfway through and went, I'm out, before it hit the hard stuff. And Paul said, nah, I can't use him, which is really cool because he restores him later on in his letters, which is just a cool thing that there is that restoration. All right? But again, he's asking, do Barnabas and I alone have no right to refrain from working? Do I have to work? Do I have to be a bivocational? All right? I did bivocational for a little bit. All right? I understand that's not an easy thing. All right? The guy at First Baptist Hooks is a physical therapist. All right? And he works, I don't know where, I guess he works, does he work at St. Michael's? I don't know. Don't ask me that. Gosh, now I can't remember his name. But I know he's a physical therapist. Yeah, he works at the physical therapy place. You know the one I'm talking about. Yeah, the one down this road, over there. Yeah, but he's bivocational, all right? Now, is that a choice? Is that a choice you have to make? Sometimes it's a necessity, all right? And so, yeah, and what he's saying is, if I have the right to choose or not to choose, that means I can either be paid to do what I'm doing, my apostleship, or what? I can just rely on the church to provide for me, which is a real blessing for me and my family because I can rely on the church to do this, okay? My last church, I was bivocational, okay? Because I had to make up the difference there. Was Paul bivocational? Sometimes, yes. We know in Corinth, in Acts 18, he gets there and he meets up with Priscilla and Aquila, who do what? They make tents. Paul makes tents. Who does he make tents for? Is he just like a REI salesman over here? Somebody made a great observation, or a curious observation. He said, Paul, because he has Roman citizenship, very well his father could have been the tent maker for the Roman legions. Think about how many tents you need for the Roman legions. And that Paul was wealthy. Because where does Paul train as a child? At the feet of Gamaliel. Essentially, he went to Harvard. Okay? So he was wealthy. He was from this area. He was a Roman citizen. He was a tent maker. You wouldn't think tent makers make a lot of money, but if they work for the Roman legions, they sell a lot of tents. All right, interesting concept. But he's just making the argument. I have the right not to work. I have the right to go, all right, I'm providing for you the gospel. You pay me because I have this apostleship. Okay, that's his whole argument. I have this right. I have this authority. Okay? Verse 7, he's going to make the argument that people don't normally do these things selflessly. Whoever goes to war at his own expense. All right? What soldier goes to war goes, I think I'll just pack up and go head off. I mean, and I've heard some cool stories about people heading over to Ukraine, flying into Romania or Poland and strapping it up with a 9mm and whatever they can carry with them and walking into Ukraine. And they're just doing that. Why? Because they like to shoot people, all right? Or they just enjoy this, but they're going at their own expense. And is Paul saying this never happens? Or is he going, that would be different. That'd be weird. No. Soldiers generally work for their government, and they get paid for what they do, all right? That's the only contrast he's making. Who plants a vineyard and does not eat its fruit? Who shepherds a flock and does not drink the milk from the flock? What he's pointing out is the obvious thing. Everybody does that. It would be weird if you didn't, all right? We had a president, didn't take a salary, lost tens of millions of dollars of his net worth. Why? That's weird. That's weird, right? Normally, people don't do that. Normally, people are poor. They go into the government, and they come out what? Multi-billionaires, all right? How does that work? I don't want to go there, all right? But this president goes in, loses all this money, and is looking to do it again. all right? It's just weird. It's just not normal. And Paul is saying this is not normal. Verse 8, am I saying this from a human perspective? In other words, is this common sense? And they're all going, no, clearly not. Doesn't the law also say the same thing? He's going to refer back to the Jewish law. Now, what does that tell us about the letter to the Corinthians? If he's citing the law, who's in the population of the Corinthian church? Especially when he cites it so readily. Doesn't the law say the same thing? Implying what? Well, you know it says the same thing. If they know it, who's the audience? Jewish people, all right? So, again, look for little clues like that as you go along and as you read the text. Doesn't the law say the same thing? For it is written in the law of Moses, do not muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain. Anybody do that? Anybody muzzle their ox while they're treading out your grain? No, of course not, because that's what the law. Catherine, you ever muzzle your ox while it's treading the grain? Huh? No. What's the premise though? The ox is working. There's a little bit of grain on the ground. Let it eat. All right. It's not going to eat all of your grain up. It's not going to do it. It's a reward. All right. The ox is given this as a reward. He's working hard. He's to be rewarded. Okay. Which I love this question though. In the backside of 9, is God really concerned with oxen? And really, it's the word for care. It's the word mellow, which means to care or have a concern. Cast all your what on the Lord? Cares on the Lord. All your mellows on the Lord, because your God mellows you, cares for you. And it says, does God really care about the oxen? And he says, what is it? Verse 10, or isn't he really saying this for us? Yes, this is written for us. Now, how big is that word us? Is he just talking about apostles? Is this written for the apostles? Or is it written for the church as a whole? I think it'd be written for both audiences. Church, you need to understand that the oxen is working hard. You should reward him for his labor, all right? At the same time, he's writing to the apostles saying, you should be working really hard to be worthy of what you're getting, all right? Nothing worse to me than a pastor who doesn't work hard at what he does, all right? Somebody just phoning it in, watching some Andy Stanley video and going, well, know what I'm preaching this week, all right? No, that's not okay, all right? You're lazy, all right? You should not be rewarded for that. Apostles should work hard for what they do, okay? Verse 12, 10, let's do 10 again. Or isn't he really saying this for us? Yes, this is written for us because he who plows ought to plow in what? Hope. All right? What does hope mean? Is there a difference between wish and hope? Yes? Tell me the difference. What's the difference between wish and hope? I used to tell people when I was teaching bunting in baseball. And there are some players that will go up there and they will go and they will bunt and they're going to be like, ugh. And I say, quit wishing the ball over there and bunt the ball over there, all right? Physically take the bat and push the ball over there so it will go where you want it to go. I say, quit wishing it over there because wishing it is not going to get it over there. You have to see it going over there. You have to roll it, push it over there where you want it to go, all right? And in Christianese, I think sometimes we use this word hope when we should be saying wish, all right? Because I say, I have a hope that I'm going to make $1 million. No, you don't. No, you have a wish. Hope is an unrevealed reality. Is that okay with everybody? It's an unrevealed reality. We have this hope in heaven, all right? We have the hope of the return of Christ. Are we wishing Christ would come back? No, Christ is coming back. It's an unrevealed reality, all right? We wish it would come sooner, amen, all right? But he's going to come back when Dad says, go back, all right? But until that time, we do have this hope, all right? And Paul says, you can't take this hope away from me. Hope cannot be taken away from you because it is a reality. It simply is not revealed yet. So as the person is plowing, all right, there should be a hope. He who threshes should do so in hope of sharing in the crop. This is sort of the hope of the ox. The ox is threshing out the wheat. He has this hope. I'm getting some food out of this thing. All right? Why? Why should there be hope? What happens when you force somebody to work and you give them no hope of a reward? Look at pretty much every communist country, right? Yeah, you can just name them all right? It takes away that human nature of the motivation of hope, the motivation of benefit, all right? And when you take that away from people, they just shut down because it doesn't matter how hard you work. You have no hope of something greater. All you have is existence, and that's never going to motivate humanity, okay? So he's just playing into sort of the human nature that he sees. Verse 11, if we have sown spiritual things for you, is it too much if we reap material benefits from you? If others have this right or this authority to receive benefits from you, don't we even more? And he's kind of using you go to the grocery store, there's an exchange. I'm not giving you groceries that are going to last you for a day. I'm giving you the word of God, the gospel that will extend into eternity. Don't I have even more right? If I'm giving you spiritual things, don't I have the right to receive material things? All right? And this is the argument they're making for apostles being paid for what they do. Okay? Good argument or a bad argument? It's an awesome argument. Amen? Amen. We like this verse. We're going, finally, somebody said it out loud. All right? Yes. No, it's a good verse. All right? But I love the next word. What? What do you have? Nevertheless? It's however's in the Holman translation. It's the word Allah, A-L-L-A, all right? It's the big but, all right? Not the little but, it's the big but. But on the contrary, I have this right, I have this freedom, I have this authority, common sense says this, everything says this, hope says this, human motivation says this, but what? We have not made use of this authority or this right. Instead, on the contrary, again, same big but, we endure everything so that the Holman translation is we will not hinder the gospel. Some of your translations may say we will not give a hindrance. That's a more literal translation. The give is the verb. We don't want to give anything that hinders, any hindrance to the gospel. All right? And isn't this what he's saying in the last verse in 8? I will never eat meat again if it causes my brother, what? To stumble, a hindrance, anything that blocks my way. I'm not going to use it. Now, what could possibly, what could he be referring to? How could any of what he said in the previous 11, 12 verses become a hindrance? Go ahead. Yeah. All right, yeah. If he's doing it for the paycheck, all right? That would never happen in a church, though, right? Never, ever would that be an issue, okay? So here's the thing. He's saying, I'm not going to provide a hindrance. So what does that mean he's doing, just in human, literal terms? He's saying, I have the right to be paid for what I do. I have the right to receive material things for my spiritual gift. The exchange is clear. I have every right to this. However, I'm going to endure everything. Endure what? Long hours, so intense. I'm going to endure this. I'm going to endure not getting a paycheck for what I'm doing. I'm going to be bivocational. I'm going to do this so that that guy in the business meeting won't say anything about my paycheck. All right? You see what I'm saying? You see what he's saying, rather? Okay? He's saying, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. Okay? Now, what we talked about Sunday is narrative normative. There are moments where there's narrative, a story that says this happened, and then there's a normative of this is the way it always happens. Should all pastors use this and go, therefore I should not get a paycheck? Lord help us if we do. No, absolutely not. We shouldn't do that. No, it's Paul saying what? I'm going to do this. I'm never going to eat meat again if it causes my brother to stumble. I'm not going to take a paycheck if this causes my brother to stumble. I'm not going to do this. Now, does that mean Paul doesn't take a paycheck from anybody or receive any spiritual blessing from anybody? What if the Corinthian church gets together like they were really good at? Well, the Philippian church was really good at it. Corinthians were a little sketchy on it, all right? The Philippian church, I think the Philippian church was Paul's sugar daddy. And I think, what was her name? Lydia? Lydia was sugar mama because Lydia was wealthy, right? I think Lydia took care of Paul a lot, all right? Because Paul always goes back to Philippi. Every time, he always goes back to Philippi. Even when he's released after Acts 28 going to Rome, where's the first place he goes? Back to Philippi, all right? And I think they were taking care of him. This is the end of the Philippians letter, right? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. What's the context of that? He had just received what? A love offering from the Philippian church. And he's saying, thank you, but I can be hungry or I can be well fed. But thank you for your gift. Thank you for the way you're providing for my material needs. Okay? So it's not an exclusive across the board. Evidently, there was something in Corinth. There was some guy in Corinth at the business meeting complaining about people getting paid. Okay? And he says, nah, let's don't go there. Go, Josh. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. He was not going to let in a more mature church, if this was the Berean church, total different conversation. But with the Corinthian church, because we can assume they were somewhat younger believers, because he talks about, I would love to feed you meat, but you're still drinking milk. You're not there yet. All right? And I think it was a cultural thing, very difficult to overcome that in the culture. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you that he's dancing around these things with the Corinthian church because of the immaturity and the weakness of their faith. So, and he doesn't want to give anybody any chance to slip away. Again, a more mature crowd, whole different conversation. Okay? All right. 13, thank you. Don't you know that those who perform the temple services eat the food from the temple? Again, he's going back to this same common sense argument. And those who serve at the altar share in the offerings and the altar. In the same way, the Lord has commanded. Who's the Lord? Thank you. Has commanded those. That's a big word. It's diatasso. Tasso is structure. This is the thorough structure set in place. This is the way things work, all right? This is what you submit to. That those who preach the gospel should live by the gospel. Holman's translates earn their living. You may have a different one. Get their living, receive their living. Yeah, it's just the word live. It's a zoe. All right? They should live by or out of the gospel. So those who preach in the gospel, utilizing the gospel, should live out of the gospel. Same argument he's making. I'm giving you spiritual blessing. I have the right to receive material blessing. All right? But what's he already said? But I'm not going to go there if it causes anybody to trip. 15. But, again, I have used none of these rights or authority, and I have not written to make this happen that way for me, which I think is just a funny statement. It's kind of like praying, God, I'm totally cool being single. Waiting for the wife to poof and magically appear, right? It worked for me. I don't know. I actually did. I prayed, God, I'm cool being single, but I wasn't looking around, and all of a sudden, literally 2 days later, Ashley and I meet, okay? Which is a cool story for me because it's kind of the way Paul's saying, I'm not writing this to make this happen. I'm not trying to manipulate anyone, all right? I'm saying this is what I believe. 4. Remember what I've said before? When you see the word for in the text, always ask the question what? Why? The for statement, the sentence that begins with for, always answers the question, why? So he says, I have used none of these rights. Why? For it would be better for me to die than for anyone to deprive me of my boast. Is boasting good? Is boasting okay? Yeah, in Christ Jesus. If you were to pull out the boast from this chapter, what would it be? What's Paul boasting about? That I have apostleship, however, I'm not employing it. That's his boast, all right? And he says, no one's going to take that away from me, okay? Now, is that an arrogance? A little bit? I mean, I'm sure there's somebody at the business meeting that would think so, right? But in general, what are we saying? Is this a boast? It's a truth. He's saying, I have this right, but I'm not going to use it. And I'm not going to let you take it away because I'm not using it. Why? What's the point of not using those rights? So that no one is hindered. That's my boast, all right? For, again, so he's going to answer the question again, why? For if I preach the gospel, I have no reason to boast because an obligation is placed on me, and woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. He says, I'm going to preach the gospel no matter what because I have an obligation placed on me, and woe to me if I don't. That's a big woe. That's Jesus' woe, all right? We get the word oy, that oive, all right? This is this word right here, okay? 17? Yes. I'm sorry, I wrote over it. Is it 17? Yeah. For if I do this willingly, I have a reward. But if unwillingly, I am entrusted with a stewardship. That's a weird sentence, all right? I had to go to the commentaries on this one, all right? For if I do this, if I preach the gospel willingly, I have a reward. But if unwillingly, I am entrusted with a stewardship. Here's kind of what I gleaned from this and what I came up with and the commentaries kind of thought. There are people who want to be in the ministry because they want to do good things and get that paycheck and stand up and command the attention of people. And maybe you've been around these people that want to be. I mean, Paul refers to it, we'll look at it when we start talking about spiritual gifts, all right? Don't desire the spiritual gift of speaking in tongues because everybody goes, ooh, look at him speaking in tongues. Want the one that's helpful to people, all right? He says, there are some people who willingly go into being a pastor, preacher, whatever, because they like the benefits of it. And they will get their reward. Now, that's not a negative thing. I don't want you to hear this is a negative thing. He's just saying there are some people that gladly go into the ministry, all right? And there are people who don't go so gladly into the ministry. Well, we call it, I refer to it as kicking and screaming, all right? There have been many times my kids still ask me, go, Dad, do you like what you do for a living? I said, no. I'm still looking to get out of this gig, all right? I'm still looking to find another job where I can do this. But I think that's a good thing. The people that scare me are the ones who want to stand up here in this pulpit, all right? I don't, and I had a lot of college students come through, and they would be like, I think I'm called to the ministry. And I'm like, oh, no, you're not. I mean, I'm not the Holy Spirit or anything, but you have no ability to communicate whatsoever. You can't stand on stage and be a pastor because you just don't have that skill set in you at all. But what they saw was the cool trips that we took, the fun times at the youth thing, and this, and they thought that would be a cool job. And I would plead with all of them, don't go into the ministry unless God has closed every single other door. Because I love this. The one who goes willingly has a reward, but the one unwillingly has what? He's entrusted with a stewardship. It's the word for trust or faith, that God has faithed into you this role, this opportunity, and you have a job to do. Now go out there and do it. I've gifted you. I've equipped you. I've placed you in the place I want you. Now go do your job. As opposed to the one who goes, I want to preach, I want to preach, I want to preach. I love the meme. It says, I feel called to preach. And it's like, you won't even stack chairs. You're not equipped to preach, all right? Until you learn how to serve, you can't do this. And I think this is where Paul's kind of going at. Go ahead. Yes. I've heard it a lot, and like I said, those are the people that kind of worry me. Oh, you mean like established preachers that are, um, they're a handful. I've heard several that say, I just love doing this. And I tell when my kids would ask, say, I love what I do. Don't get me wrong, okay? I love teaching. I wish we could do this every single night. I would do this 8 hours a day. I love teaching, okay? But even Paul says there's a burden to being a leader in and a lot of this is 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians, here's why it's so bad to be a pastor. That's the whole book of 2 Corinthians is this is not a job for the weak at heart. It's not the job for the guy who just wants to be on stage. Okay, it's very few because I think we all understand after a while the hardness of this and the burden it is because and people always kind of joke about, and I joke about this, that business meeting and this and all this and whatever. It's not that. It's the people that you see walk away and just you begged and you pleaded and you discipled them and you taught them and all of a sudden they're gone. Or they're divorcing their wife. They've left the church and it just crushes you. Oh, I agree, and trust me, I've done both, so I understand what you're saying. It's just so the emotional trauma of it is what makes it tough. So, I know, or dropping out of baseball. that was no. I need a catcher. Why would you quit now? All right. Anyway, so let's get back to work. All right. Where am I? 18. What then is my reward? I like this. He asked this question. If I preach willingly, I get a reward, but if I preach unwillingly, I'm entrusted with this stewardship. That's such a bigger thing to me. That's just such a bigger thing. That really has meant a lot to me this week. What then is my reward? All right? To preach the gospel and offer it free of charge and not make full use of my authority in the gospel. See why I'm saying this is his boast? Because I want to do it for free. I want to be able to just do it because I love you guys. And let's take my money, any money you would give me, and let's just give away to other people. And I'll go build tents, or I'll go do this. I've offered many times to Trinity. I'll teach, and I'll coach baseball. I'll do whatever it takes, all right? And then we'll get rid of my salary and just do something else, all right? But that was his desire. That was his desire, and I think that was his boast, to kind of do this pro bono. So 19. This is the part of the chapter you've all heard before. So let's kind of focus in on this. He set up the whole thing of, I am an apostle. I have not used these rights. I have not used this authority. Here's my great desire. Here's my big why of my life. Right? And I think we all need to find that. We all need to find the big why in our life. Why do I exist? What do I want to accomplish? I always love in Paul's first sermon at Pisidian Antioch in Acts 13. He talks about when John the Baptist's life calling ended, or when his life's purpose ended. And ever since the first time I read that, I was like, what's my life's purpose? At the end of this thing, what is it? What's my why? We know what Paul says, to preach the gospel, make it fully known, free of charge. And so here's how he's going to carry that out. In verse 19, although I am a free man, same question he starts with. Am I free? Am I eleutherios? Do I have freedom? Yes. Although I'm free and I'm not anyone's slave, doulos. I have made myself a slave. I've literally enslaved myself to everyone. All right? So Paul says of himself, I am a slave to everyone sitting here in this church. All right? And I would agree with him 100%. When I stand up here, I am not the pastor over you guys in a sense of I have authority and then I will inflict everything on you. I want to be a slave to you guys so that I come and I serve you week after week after week. That's his mentality, all right? So I am free and I'm not anyone's slave, but I have made myself to everyone. Why? And you see this pattern. In order to, or so that, what? To what? What does your translation say? Win? Everybody has win? What do you have, Sandy? Recruit? Wow, that's a really bad translation. That's okay. It's the word kerdaino, all right? Kerdaino, it means to gain or to profit, all right? It's to bring someone across. The win is not a bad translation at all right? But I think when we get into sort of sports win losses, that kind of thing, and it's kind of a bad idea. It's more to bring someone to our side. If you want to Red Rover it, all right? When you win in Red Rover, what happens? That person has to stay, or you get to take one with you. Okay, so it's more of that idea more than, hey, I scored more points than you did. Okay, that's not. It's the idea, I want to win more people. I want to gain more people. I want to bring more people over. And how is he implementing that? What's the methodology he's using? I became a slave to everyone so that we could win more. I serve you so that we could win more people. That's his ambition. That's his goal. 20. To the Jews, I became like a Jew. Okay? Does that mean he became a Jew? Is he transforming? Is he changing all of the things? No, he became like a Jew. All right? When Jesus prayed in the garden, the drops of blood were like blood. Okay? There's 100 different analogies of this. Like a dove descending on Jesus at his baptism. All right? There's a lot of like. So he says, I became like a Jew. All right? Why? To gain, win, profit Jews. All right? So when I have a conversation with someone, when Paul has a conversation with someone and they're a Jewish person, what happens? He kind of transforms into what? I want to speak to you on your level. Why? So that I can convince you of Christ. So to the Jewish person, he speaks like a Jewish person. Is he going to quote the law? Is he going to quote the prophets? Is he going to make those arguments? Absolutely. That's why I always say, when you read the Gospels, don't try and mesh them all together. All right? That's why we've been studying Luke. I don't want to, every time we do this, I don't want to go, well, Matthew says this, and Mark says this, and Luke says this, and let's mash them all together and come up with one thing. Now, there are times I do that because I want clarification. But we want to leave this out there and let Luke be Luke, right? Because Luke talks about what? The face of Jesus. Why does Luke talk about the face of Jesus? Why does Luke talk about Jesus healing the ear of Malchus? He's a doctor. He has this conversation. And he's writing to who? He's writing to a Greek audience. Does Luke quote a bunch of Old Testament passages? No. Does Matthew? Yes. Does Mark? No, because it's Peter. And Peter's like, I ain't got time for that. I'm a fisherman. All right? I'm just telling a story here. All right? And John is sitting back 60 years later going, I can't believe they all left this story out. Let's make sure we tell this story. And he's speaking to an Ephesian audience. Okay? So there's differences here. Paul is saying the same thing. When I talk to a Jew, I talk to them like they're a Jew and I'm a Jew. And that way I can win them more. I'm more winsome. I like that word. To be more winsome in this. To those under the law, like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, to win those under the law. To those who are without the law. All right? This is just sort of you're either under or not under. All right? And he kind of gets repetitive here. Not being without God's law, but within Christ's law. What's the law of Christ? Remember this one, Catherine? What's a law? There you go. See how easy it is? All right? That's what he sees. So is Paul, a Jewish man, still under the law? His wording is not mine. I'm not under God's law, all right? I'm under Christ's law, all right? So are we under the 10 Commandments? No wonder the one commandment, love one another. Okay, that cleared all up? Yeah, it's pretty simple, all right? That's why it's just 3 words, okay? So, again, why is he doing this? So, he is a Jewish man, all right? He goes to somebody's house. They're having burgers. What does he do? Helps himself, all right? Put some mustard on that thing. Let's eat. Why? What's his purpose? Why doesn't he go, I can't believe you would do this. None of my one in my faith would do this. I will never become like you. I will never do this. Well, thanks for coming to the house for dinner. That was a lot of fun, all right? But what if he goes, let's eat? Now they can have the conversation. So he's becoming these things without compromising his beliefs and compromising anything. Why? So that he can gain, bring more people under his tent, have more conversations, bring people into the faith. Again, is he compromising anything? No. He's being relatable, though. He's being a winsome person so that he can win some persons. Everybody get that? You see what I did there? So if you're not a winsome person, how many people are you going to win? None. All right? That's why I say legalistic Christians, nobody likes you. And you need to hear that. If you're walking around pointing out everybody's faults all the time, they're going, avoid Bob, all right? He's got his Bible out just whacking people, all right? No one likes you, okay? How about become relatable so that people will think you are winsome so that you can, what? Win some. There you go. All right? See how easy that is? You'll remember that forever. No, you won't. All right. To the weak, I became weak. What's he referring to? He's talked about weak, right? Who's the weak? The people who don't go to the gym? Yeah, the younger Christians, the ones who are a little confused about the whole eating things. He goes, okay, I'm not going to eat meat if it causes anyone to stumble, all right? And then the catch-all statement, I have become all things to all people so that I may, by every possible means, save some. So to win people means to do what? Do you see what he did right there? He says, I want to win people, I want to win people, I want to win people, I want to win people so that I might save some. So obviously what? To win means to do what? To bring them to salvation, all right? To show them the mechanism of salvation so that they can be saved. Now, 23, now I do all this because of the gospel of Christ, so that I may become a partner in its benefits. I do all this because I want to enjoy the party. I get so much benefit out of this. That's what I want to do, all right? I don't get a bonus for every person that gets saved, all right? I just get to enjoy the party. I mean, this is Luke 15, right? The woman finds the coin. What does she say? Come celebrate with me, all right? I want to be in that celebration. The guy, the shepherd, finds the sheep. The son comes home. Dad says what? Let's enjoy. And the older brother says what? Forget you. Check the audience on that. You'll see who said that, all right? All right, 24. Don't you know, and now he's gonna go, he really likes sports, all right? I can relate, all right? Somebody said they were betting one time. Somebody came in and said, I bet he does a sports analogy. That's a sucker bet, all right? Because you all know 95% of the sermons are gonna have a sports analogy somewhere in them somewhere, right? Right, Benny? All right? So if you want to make a bet and make a little money off somebody when you bring a visitor, make that bet, okay? Don't you know, and he's referring to this, and it's especially applicable to the Corinthians because they had the Isthmian games. It's hard to say. Isthmian? Isthmus? Is that say? Yeah, I'm saying that right. Isthmus, all right? There is an isthmus that leads to the Peloponnesus, which is where Corinth is located. Okay, isthmus is a piece of land. Panama Canal, Panama. All right, everybody with me? All right, so they had the Olympic Games in Olympia, in Mount Olympia, all right, and they had the Isthmian Games in Corinth. So they got it, all right? They're sports folks, all right? Don't you know that the runners in a stadium all race, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way to win the prize. Now, here's my question real quick. Is it okay for Christians to be ambitious and to want to win in ministry? If we're going to get spiritual, I'm just being competitive for the Lord. True. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't know, because I'm not the type that has to win all the time. So I can't believe y'all just sat there and just let that go. Y'all were going, who's he talking? Who's he talking about? Yes, I am extremely competitive. Now, is competitive ambitious? Is that okay in the ministry? And I think you're making a good point, because I think there are some people that are like, I want to have more people than everybody else. Why? The question is why. It's not what I think Paul wanted to have more than everybody else. You know why? Because he wanted to preach the gospel to them so they could hear it, so that he could partake in the benefits and the party. All right? I think that was clearly his ambition. There are people in the ministry, believe it or not, who don't have that same mentality. They're the bigger church, how many people, how many services. Caden is right down from Auburn, and I was listening to the pastor. He's been to this one church, and he's constantly referring to, well, all my folks in Birmingham and all my folks over here and all of you that couldn't fit into the room tonight, and we're going to have 12 more services because so many people want to come to hear me speak. And I'm like, okay, we get it. All right? How about just preach the gospel? All right? And it's really, again, it's that celebrity culture that can kind of kick in. It's really dangerous. All right? That's why we say, I'm glad I didn't plant a church until I was 40 and I knew who I was, because in my 30s, I would have wrecked a church because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I did well. I didn't know the way God had gifted and shaped me, so that I know what kind of audience I serve best. All right? You give me an audience of 5,000 people and I'm lost, because I can't look at you. I can't react. I can't play off your reactions. I can't ask you questions. I can't pick on people. All right? You put somebody that's a gifted evangelist that can do 20,000 people in a stadium, you put them in a room like this, they're horrible, because they don't know what to do when somebody reacts to what they just said it completely throws them off, all right? But you got to know who you are, all right? Ambition, is it okay or not? That's an interesting question. That's something that my pastor friends and I have always discussed. Is it okay, all right? And again, it always comes back to what you're saying. Are they doing it for the Lord, all right? Jesus. Raise your hand and say Jesus. Exactly. But what is the motivation? What's the effect of this? If I run in such a way that I want to win the prize, all right? That means for me, every day, Monday, I'm waking up, I'm opening up what we're doing in 242, and I am studying. I want to know every Greek word I can. I want to know what all the commentaries are saying. I want to think through everything, and I want to write out the 242 material and have it out to you guys in a timely fashion, all right? Tuesday morning, I'm waking up. Hey, it's 1 Corinthians. I want to print this thing out. I want to know every single Greek word in here. I want to be equipped. Because why? Because I am running to win the prize. All right? I'm not going to just show up and wing it. And that's my commitment to you as your slave. All right? That's what I do. Hunter, did you have a question? Apathy. Yeah. And I think you could break that down in what you were saying, godly ambition versus material or cultural or secular ambition. I think those are polar opposites. The drive. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll just be honest with you. Pastoring is really tough because you're supposed to be really humble. And I'm just not, I don't know, Am I humble? I don't know if I'm humble or not. I know, I shouldn't ask my wife that. Yeah, I know. Um, because when you break it down, here's what I'm doing. I'm expecting you guys to give up half of a day where you don't have to go to work and sit here and listen to me for 45 minutes. That's pretty arrogant of me to command or expect that of you. Now, you may not see it that way, but in a manner of speaking, that's kind of the way I see it sometimes. And to me, that feels very arrogant a lot of times. But I want to do it really well so that you gladly come. And some of you are going, hey, go 45 more. Not many of you, but there are some. There are some that are like, yeah, let's keep going, all right? Some are like, no, you tapped out already, bud, let's go. In fact, we are tapped out, all right? But I think this is his idea. This is a race, and I'm not going to run halfway. And we'll keep going with the text. Not everyone who competes exercises self-control and everything. However, they do it to receive a crown that will not fade away, but we receive a crown that will not fade away. Why? There's an ambition there. I want to do this really, really well because there's a lot riding on what I do for a living, all right? Chris has got a lot riding on what he does for a living, all right? Chris screws up, somebody dies, all right? But here's the thing. I screw up, and somebody spends eternity in hell. That's a big on me right there, all right? And not to say that I'm that important, but I do know that that can be the consequence. If I screw up, somebody turns away from the faith, and they're gone for eternity, all right? And Paul communicates that. He says, I don't run like one who runs aimlessly, all right, without any sort of, you blow up a balloon and let it go. I don't run that way, all right? And I don't box like one beating the air, but I discipline my body and bring it under strict control. I make it my slave, so that after preaching to others, I myself will not be disqualified, which is the scariest verse in the entire Bible for me, because it opens up the possibility of what? I might be disqualified. So I have to discipline my body. I have to do this. And this is what Paul is trying to tell the Corinthians, all right? Because he wants them to understand what he's doing and understand why he's doing it. But the main walkaway is what? I'm preaching because I want you guys to know the gospel. I want you guys to be saved. I want everybody to be saved. I want to preach the gospel without any hindrance, because the main thing, the big why of my life is what? I just want to preach the gospel. I just want to tell people the gospel. If I have to build tents so I can do this well, so be it. I'll endure everything. But that's the why. And I think that's the real question. What's the why of your life? All right? And it doesn't have to be this glamorous job like I have. All right? It can be you just doing what you're doing, but you're doing it really, really well. And people are drawn to Christ because you're so winsome in the way you do what you do. Even as menial as it may be, you are still, like I said, I love Brother Lawrence, Practice of the Presence of God. You should read that little pamphlet, all right? He wanted to be a big priest guy, and he was never smart enough, so he just took a job as a dishwasher in the monastery in France, late 1600s. And after a while, the students would skip class to come sit in the washroom and listen to him talk about the practice of the presence of God. Again, it's about your why. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. And we all need to look for that. Okay? Cool? All right, come back with 10 next week, a little history lesson from Israel. So, interesting text. Let me pray. Father, thank you for just letting us look at your text. I thank you for Paul. I thank you for that he's such a hero to me. I thank you for just his heart and his ministry. I thank you for the beautiful words that he wrote. I thank you, God, for preserving these words so that I can be challenged and encouraged, so that we can hear the heart of Paul, so that we might know what it is we are called to be. All of us are called to be, especially those of us in ministry. So, Father, I thank you for these texts. Thank you for my disciples and just their willingness to continue to come out and just be taught the word. I thank you for their hearts. I pray that you would reward them for the time they've spent here tonight and just bless them for that. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.